if you're like most people, you're likely unaware of a very serious threat to your health, and that is these compounds generically classified as EDCs, and that's short for endocrine disrupting chemicals. And we're going to be talking to a guest today. Her name is Leah, and 15 years ago created an organization called Mamavation. It's mamavation.com. And her group actually impacts millions of people, and they're passionate about testing for these types of chemicals in the substances that we're regularly exposed to, like cosmetics and foods and things where you wouldn't believe that it's in there, and it's pervasive, and it's a real issue. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. Understanding this influence on your biology is a real important part of the equation.
We have about 30 studies that we've commissioned on all kinds of food, personal care, consumer products, where we send something off to the lab, have it looked for various contaminants like PFAS, forever chemicals, phthalates, heavy metals, pesticides, all kinds of stuff. These chemicals are hormone disrupting, they're problematic, and a lot of these companies haven't done this testing, and the second I start doing it, it's out there in public. And then it kind of stops them from being able to say, oh, we don't know. Then they have to start looking into it themselves.
Welcome, everyone. Dr. Mercola helping you take control of your health. And today we're here with Leah, who has a founder of a site that's really interesting and really aligned with what we're doing. It's Mamavation.com. And it's a fascinating story. And rather than me attempt to define it, I'm going to let Leah do that, because you're really going to be intrigued at what she's doing. And I've got a lot of questions for her. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Mercola. Well, I'm the founder of Mamavation.com, and we're really excited to be on your platform. We've been kind of friends on Twitter for quite a bit, and we have a lot of friends in common. So I'm excited to finally get to meet you. Mamavation has been around since 2009.
Yeah.
So we're kind of considered a dinosaur in the blogger space, but I don't really feel like a dinosaur. I just kind of feel like things go very fast and I keep up as best I can. So what we do is we're a community of moms, and we help women navigate the grocery store by providing really hard-hitting investigations about hormone disrupting chemicals in food and consumer products. So right now, if you look at our site, we have about 30 studies that we've commissioned on all kinds of food, personal care, consumer products, where we send something off to the lab, have it looked for various contaminants like PFAS, forever chemicals, phthalates, heavy metals, pesticides, all kinds of stuff. And then we take that data to our scientific advisory team. And one of our partners who looks at our data is Carnegie Mellon Institute and their Institute for Green Sciences. And another one is Environmental Health Sciences, who also has a big group of independent sciences at their disposal, because they work with them all day long and help them get to Europe and report on the news. And so we kind of use all of our resources, and then we communicate our findings on Mamavation.com. And we either do it by commissioning those studies with a lab, or it's based on vetting materials and ingredients. Sometimes what's in public, other times we have to communicate with companies, like for instance, if we're looking into air fryers and we need to know what materials are in the food contact surfaces. So that's kind of what we do. And Mamavation has been around for quite a bit. But essentially, we are a lot of women who are really passionate about low tox, non-tox lifestyle and helping other women and other people kind of navigate that realm. So that's what we do.
Interesting. Well, what motivated you to start that entity, organization?
Yeah, so it started many years ago when I first met my husband, and my father, right after I got married, was diagnosed with mesothelioma cancer. And that's the type of cancer back then where once they found out, they give you like 6 months to live. And that's essentially what happened to my father. So he was a locomotive engineer, and he was also what you would call a hopper. And a hopper, before he was an engineer, they would take the engines when they were broken and take them to the mechanics. And the mechanics were like in this like shielded place where there was no ventilation. And so a lot of the mechanics got sick, but my father also got sick. So the whole time I was alive, my father had mesothelioma and no one ever knew it. So we were all exposed to it, but my father obviously was exposed the most. So when
Yeah,
he passed,
usually it's
yeah,
due to asbestos, typically.
asbestos. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. For those of you who
Mm.
don't know, mesothelioma comes from asbestos exposure, and
Yeah.
it can be just a little teeny bit. But my
Hmm.
father had it the whole time. So when my father passed away from mesothelioma, it just rocked our family. And then after he passed away, I had an aunt die of breast cancer, an uncle die of lung cancer, and another uncle die of, complications to pharmaceutical drugs. And from that whole experience of having a big extended Nordic family, we were so tight knit, to just decimation and my cousins moving all across the United States. It was so impactful on me. It just gave me this desire to have two things. Health and family were the most important thing for me after that. And so the trajectory of what my life and where I thought I was going to go, which ironically was I wanted to be a lobbyist for the energy industry. So this is
Mm.
very different than where I thought my life was going to head. Now, today, completely different. I'm working on consumer issues. I'm testing food every day. I'm testing things for these chemicals that are linked to hormone disruption and cancer. And that's been my passion for, well, let's see, since 2006, I would say 2005. So fast forward today, it's been, many years since then. I have at my disposal resources, a whole cast of scientists and advisors and doctors and all kinds of people who help me. I have a master's degree from USC in communication management. So, what I'm really good at is taking really complicated things and breaking them down into bite sized pieces for everyday people. And it's also why my advisors like me, because I kind of bring that perspective to
Hmm.
them and I also
Hmm.
help them with their communication.
Hmm.
So, it's really, a great marriage of the minds. And so, but what I do, I'm just so passionate about testing the grocery store because these chemicals are hormone disrupting, they're problematic. And I know that if I spend my own money and spend my resources and just start testing things, it moves the needle right away because a
Mm.
lot of these companies, for the contaminants I'm testing for, a lot of these companies haven't done this testing. And the second
Hmm.
I start doing it, it's out there in public. And then it kind of
Hmm.
stops them from being able to say, oh, we don't know. Then they have to start looking into it themselves. And then the market starts moving because the people that follow me are mostly organic eaters. They're mostly women who care about these issues. And so let's say, for instance, you're an organic brand and you have a ton of PFAS in your product. Once that's out there, the organic eaters are going to opt to choose and select a company that looks for those things and avoids those things. And it just kind of shifts the market and it makes it so that people are healthier. And so that's kind of what I see my role is just kind of getting that to speed up a little quicker than what it would take the FDA to test things. Because if we leave it up to the FDA, man, we're going to be dead before they start testing everything.
No,
So,
you're essentially doing what many people perceive the job of the FDA and the EPA would be to protect the public. But there's essentially no federal agency that does that. If anything, they're doing the exact converse of that role, playing the exact converse. So kudos to you for doing that. And now we know your secret sauce. You're gifted in communication, so you can translate things for people, and that's why you've grown to develop an effective organization. And I was impressed with the number of people in your organization because you have influence for sure, and you move the needle as you mentioned. So, how many people follow your work?
well, we have millions of women across the United States and Canada that follow our our site. Then we also have, I would say, we have a small group, a Facebook group that's about
Mm-hmm.
15,000 people that I keep very slim because it's
Mm-hmm.
very engaging and we like to keep it like not just non-toxic. I would say consumer wise, but also non toxic feeling wise. It's a very supportive group for women. So we're very, we manage that really, really tightly. We also have Facebook fan page. It's about 200,000. I'm on Twitter in different categories. And if you add up all those, it's probably about 150,000 or so. And then, we're on Instagram as well. And so we're kind of like in all the main areas. I don't spend as much time as I used to on Twitter or as much time on Instagram. I'm mostly on Facebook, most because that's where the moms are still at. They're on Instagram and Facebook, but I'm mostly on Facebook because I'm a writer, not so much a visual person, but a writer. And but yeah, I mean, but the other thing about me that is unique with a lot of influencers is I used to own a media company with over 10,000 bloggers at my disposal. And back in the day, I
Mm-hmm.
used to be the person that would pair influencers with organic brands. And so, in addition to having, just an audience of these millions of moms, I also have a lot of influencers that would be considered wellness green influencers that follow things that I do. So when I drop something, a lot of those influencers are also saying, ooh, maybe we should align ourselves with this brand versus this brand. So in a way, I'm moving the needle in a very unique way than just a regular influencer would be, because in addition to that media company and that network that I had, I also produced a conference called ShiftCon for about 5 years, and that was the Green Blogger Conference. We shut that down in 2020 because, a lot of things shut down in 2020, and I pivoted more to doing these consumer studies full time. But that was also what we had. I would gather. We'd have about 300 to 500 influencers and brands and NGOs and scientists all gather over a weekend, and we'd get everybody together. And a lot of it would be educating influencers with the independent scientists on how to communicate these issues, and then workshops and all kinds of stuff to help them grow their networks. So I've had my hands in a lot of things over the years. So yeah, just unique, and I love my community and I love what I do. So,
Perfect. Are you based in Canada?
no, I'm in Southern California.
Oh, sorry. Were you from Canada?
Nope. Nope, not from
Okay.
Canada. I do have a lot of Canadian friends, but not from
Okay.
Canada. Southern
Okay.
California, born and raised,
All right. Well,
just
good.
outside of LA.
Well, perfect. Well, not so perfect because it's a nice place to live, but at least climate-wise
The
environment. But
weather is great, I would
yeah,
say,
that's
but
about it. I wanted to mention that I'm writing a book on cellular health, and it's a unified theory of health, and it really identifies three factors that contribute to virtually all disease. And if you address these factors, you can recover from any disease, essentially cured any disease, assuming you're not too far along. I mean, there is a point of no return that you
right.
just lose the energy you require to turn things around. But assuming you're not there, you can reverse pretty much any disease. And so these three factors all influence your gut and cause an increase in endotoxins, which is the fourth factor. But that's something you control indirectly. So the three main factors are seed oils,
Hmm.
EMF, and what you're
Hmm.
focusing on,
Hmm.
which is EDCs, or
Right.
endocrine disrupting chemicals.
Right.
That is, largely related to plastic, but certainly many other chemicals. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but do you know how they work, work mechanistically to destroy your biology? How
Well,
do
I
they
know
do
there's
it?
a lot of ways it does it, but I don't know
Yes.
every single one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you think the main one is?
Well, I mean, when we talk a lot with my advisors, they do talk a lot about obesogen and obesogenic chemicals because
Yes.
we like to talk less about dying and cancer because I'm a communication major. I know dying and cancer shuts people down. So we like to focus
Mm-hmm.
more on obesogenic. So things that are
Mm-hmm.
annoying that don't kill you are things that women can take in and
Mm-hmm.
conceptualize and digest without shutting down their brain because it's not as scary.
Mm-hmm.
For an example, so obesogenic chemicals, one way of they can change your metabolism, but also they can change one cell into a fat cell. So like a bone cell can turn into a fat cell and vice versa. And, change your metabolism, mess with your gut health. I mean, I know that there's like lists and lists that they've shown me. I don't have them all memorized for sure.
No,
Not
no,
because I'm
no.
not
But
a
there's one
doctor, but
central mechanism that causes all of those, though. And most, don't worry. I mean, I'm not trying to grill you or anything, because almost every one of your advisors doesn't know the answer to this.
right.
Okay. And they went to professional training, they have
Yeah, and they're
PhDs or
chemists and
MDs,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay. So don't feel bad. It's a relatively novel approach, but the beauty of it is it's very simple. The way they work, and I almost had this mixed up because I initially said it was estrogen that was this factor, but reality, it's the EDCs. Estrogen can be an influence. The reason why they're conflated is that the primary mechanism of EDCs and how they impact biology is definitely obesogenic, but it's the central core is that it activates the estrogen receptors in the cell, very similar to how EMFs activates the VGCCs, the voltage gated calcium receptors. And they all cause this reaction that increases the input of calcium into the cell.
Calcium.
And when you get extra calcium inside the cell, you get two reactive oxygen species that increase pretty dramatically. It's called superoxide and nitric oxide. And they can combine almost instantaneously to form this very powerful reactive nitrogen species, not reactive oxygen, called peroxynitrite. And that causes this cataclysmic, destruction of oxidative stress. And then reactive oxygen species too. So it just destroys your biology. And interestingly, women obviously have a higher level of estrogen than men, right?
Yeah.
Of course. So, and it occurred, I just realized this morning, and I'm going to integrate it into my book because I didn't understand it before, but I've known this for decades as a clinician. And every astute clinician knows this, that most autoimmune diseases are much higher in women, much higher in women. Rheumatoid arthritis being a primary one, multiple sclerosis.
Yeah,
Usually it's almost
all the
3
time in our
times.
community. There's a lot of I would say
Yes,
the vast majority of women in our community have some type of issue like this, or their
yes,
children have autism or allergies or
right,
something
of
like that. We
course.
all come to
Yeah.
this
Now it's
in
a
a
little bit
similar
different in
way.
men, in males with autism, because interestingly, the ratio gets reversed. It's mostly men or males.
Right.
But in autoimmune diseases, clearly the predominance is women. Not that males don't get it. They do, but most of them are women. And I think it's because of the estrogen. They have this stronger input of estrogen. And biological estrogen is okay. You need it. Without it, you're not going to be optimal at all. But the problem is the very issue you're working on, which is why I bring it up. It's the EDCs.
Right.
Because the EDCs provide this threshold of estrogenic stimulus that activates the estrogen receptors. And if you've got endogenous estrogen on top of that, it's, oh no, I'm already overloaded. What's happening? That's why these women get it. And eventually it ends up in the reason you get autoimmune disease is really quite simple. It destroys your gut. It basically you decrease mitochondrial energy. You cannot, and then you need mitochondrial energy to have this low oxygen environment, no oxygen environment in your colon. When it's not there, then you kill the good bacteria. The good bacteria make the short chain fatty acids that feed the cells that keep the gut healthy, the colonocytes. And then you can create these holes, little holes, leaky gut in your gut. And these proteins leak through that resemble structures in your body, like your joints or your neurological tissues. And bang, your body starts reacting against itself. So the key is lowering the estrogenic stress. So what you're doing, I wanted to point out, is a really powerful strategy to address these autoimmune diseases. And you didn't even know you were doing it.
Well, you can
Did
tell by
you?
who I'm surrounded by, but yeah, I mean, the women who are really interested in these topics do suffer from these types of things. And so
Yes.
I do hear a lot of stories about how this is really, really helpful for them. And we're just happy to serve in that way because, it's not just cancer that's the problem. A lot of these
No,
diseases are
it's
all
everything.
hormone related. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, 100%, 100%. And that's our audience and that's what we're hoping to do. I mean, because hormone disruption today turns into something even more detrimental later. And that's absolutely what we're trying to
Yeah.
say.
Essentially, the hormone disruption and the activation of the estrogen receptors is what lowers your mitochondrial energy. And that is the core of all disease. All disease is lowered mitochondrial energy.
So we're happy to take it from 0 to 10
So,
as quick as we can. Because, I mean, if it was up to
yeah.
me, I wish I had the budget of the FDA because I would have tested the entire grocery store and put it all online by now. We're just
So
limited as to
walk
our
me through
budget.
your process. There's, well, let me just, before I go into your process, every year, do you know how much
Mhm.
plastic is made every year in the world? A
Trillion
lot
dollar
is the right
industry.
answer, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the latest data we have is 2023, and that was 400 million tons.
yeah.
400 million tons. In 1950, the first year they started making plastic in significant quantities, it was 1 million tons.
Mm.
1950. 2023 is 400 million. You know what's going to be in 25 years?
No,
Over 1 billion tons.
so frightening. I mean,
And as we said earlier,
ugh,
there's other materials other than plastic that cause these diseases. Absolutely. But they're probably one of the biggest forces in it, the phthalates and the bisphenols. Would
yeah.
you agree, or what's your perception on it?
I mean, phthalates, bisphenols, but we also have PFAS has their own microplastics as well. It's the Teflon fluoropolymers of the world that we
Yeah, well,
don't
that's
have.
definitely EDC, but it's not a plastic. It's a separate chemical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But what makes it even more difficult is
pretty.
it's impossible to test for and identify. So you can't identify these fluoropolymers with like a test to say you have PTFE. Those tests don't exist
Wow,
yet. So we're
did
in
not
this
know that.
world of
So how
they
do
can't even test the fluoropolymers for their health impacts because they can't even identify them yet, which is part of the issue with PFAS chemicals. There's over 15,000 of these chemicals, and you can really only identify at this point maybe less than 100 in like a really good commercial lab. In a university lab, maybe 150, but we're
Oh
still,
wow, that's still way less than 1%.
yeah, I mean, so to me, my advisors are all about that soup that we're unaware of, the
Yes. Yeah.
chemical hormonal soup. And so all of these EDCs are working together in a soup that we don't understand. And that soup in general, the lobbying for many, many decades has created a situation where the FDA and EPA ignore most of the soup. I mean, just to give you an example, when the FDA evaluates pesticides, they only look at the active ingredient. They don't look at all of the additional chemicals in the formulation. So it's kind of like if you had a spaghetti sauce, the
Mhm.
glyphosate would be the tomatoes, and the spices and the oils and all those other things would be the other part of the formulation that's created, put in there to make it more toxic to the plant, to suck it up. But they don't even evaluate that whole formula because it would cost too much, or there's too many different ones, or what have you. And that's just an example of how the system has been created that works against us. And no one's looking at the soup, to see kind of how we're interacting with the soup and how it's different from place to place. So, that's their frustration is trying to, like, for me, it's like we're trying to get at these single chemicals, but there are so many more out there that I would love to be able to test and go after. But I'm kind of like at this point trying to just hit the big ones. PFAS is a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
one because I know that's ubiquitous and they're very concerned about that. Phthalates is another one that we're working on right now. We just started testing phthalates, all the oils for phthalates. So we're kind of like putting that out. We just did olive oil. We've done coconut oil. I have ghee coming out, tallow, all the different oils you can think of later this year. So, and I'm just kind of, trying to get at these big, these big soupy chemicals, so to speak, to kind of null it down as best as we can. And,
Good.
you know,
Okay, so I'm particularly intrigued with these PFAS. I was not aware that they were so difficult to detect and that we don't really have good technology. Now, my experience with the fluoride chemicals mostly relates to the Teflon coatings,
mhm.
and they're I used to joke in my lectures. I said, yeah, Teflon pans are fine. There's no problem with them as long as you don't cook with them. And the moment you heat them, they start to volatilize fluoride. That fluoride vapor is not good for you. Will kill birds. I mean,
Right.
well documented. So, but these chemicals are something different. Are these the PFASs that wind up in these consumer products? And can you describe that more? Because I was not aware of it. And I just so you know, I spent this entire 4th of July weekend, literally probably over a dozen, maybe 20 hours writing the last chapter that I wrote for my book, which is
Right.
The Plastic Plague, The
Mm-hmm.
Dangers of EDC. So
Mm-hmm.
I had like almost 200 references on the review. So I'm familiar with this, and I didn't hit the PFAS. For some reason, it didn't come up in my searches. So
So
help
there's two
enlighten us about
different
the
types.
PFAS.
So there's two categories of PFAS. You have the polymers and the monomers. The tests that we
Okay.
have are all those monomers, but most of them are the legacy chemicals. Most of them are the ones that are not even pretty much used yet. Some of them still are, but not really. The vast majority of what you're seeing that gets up to the 10 parts per million and above, those are the polymers. because the vast majority of what's allowable in food and consumer products are those fluoropolymers that they use as lubricants, slip agents, drums, coatings of drums. So, like how we got rid of Teflon pans, but did the
Hmm.
manufacturers get rid of the Teflon drums or the Teflon that's inside the fiberglass that brings things from A to B?
Oh,
Or
wow.
the fluorinated plastic that's used to wrap things or store things or what have you. So there's a lot of things in manufacturing that we've found over the 30 plus investigations and consumer studies that we've dropped and then worked with brands behind the scenes. They come to us and they'll be like, oh my God, we need your help. And we're like, I'm more than happy to help you. So I have a database of where the bodies have been buried from some of the brands that have gone in, identified what their problems are, and then told us, this is where we found it. And sometimes other brands will come to me and say, oh my gosh, we're having problems. And I'll just go into my database and say, there was 3 brands that found this, and this. This is maybe where you're going to want to look. But a lot of it are these fluoropolymers. So the hardest thing about the fluoropolymers is they are impossible to identify. Like I said before, there
Hmm.
are no tests to identify these fluoropolymers. So PTFE, Teflon, that's just one example. We
Hmm.
know that chemical is out there, but there's not a test that you can identify it. So if you don't have tests to identify something, you can't test the health
Hmm.
impact on a
Hmm.
chemical that you can't identify. It feels like crazy world, but that's exactly what's happening. And just to know that there's 15,000 of these PFAS chemicals out there, and we're barely hitting it with, we have most of the tests that are used are like, 18 chemicals, 25 chemicals, 40 chemicals. And that's what the brands are testing for. And that's pretty much it. So what I'm doing is a little different, and I'm doing this with the blessing of my advisors who work with PFAS chemicals. I'm doing organic fluorine testing because organic fluorine is what all of these chemicals have in common. And 99.9% of the time,
Oh,
when you're finding organic fluorine, you're finding a type of PFAS or you're finding a type of chemical that you do not want to drink
oh,
or put on your skin.
nice.
So we're doing
And
we're testing really high at 10 parts per million, but that's kind of the level where you can get the polymers in with the results. And when you have tests that go below that, they can't get the polymers. So it's really important for us to be able to identify this. Now, for instance, here's a couple of examples. When you test for dental floss, we did that
mhm.
test of dental floss and looked at all the different dental flosses. By the way, Dr. Mercola, I'd like to say we just recently tested your dental floss. You were non-detect. Thank you very much. That's not public yet, but I just wanted to let you know we have that in the database. We'll be adding that pretty soon. But if you look at the vast majority of these dental flosses, they have some issues. It's coming from the waxes. It's coming from them adding it on purpose into the PTFE,
It's
and the levels
slippier.
are astronomical.
Yeah.
We also found it in contact lenses. The vast majority of all the contact lenses that we tested we weren't able to identify it, but we're definitely
Mhm.
finding organic fluorine. They vary in levels, absolutely. But the Chinese just came out with a study, I think it was last year, they dropped it and said that people who wear contact lenses are more likely to have higher levels of PFAS in their blood. So there's studies to back up what we're saying coming out after we do stuff. We've also looked at stuff like yoga pants. We found PFAS in the crotch of yoga pants. So you'll find it in the crotch of yoga pants, but not in the leg. So it's obviously being treated for, scents and liquid and stuff like that. Another one we did is we tested Ziploc bags. And I know I don't like plastic either, but we wanted to know which ones were fluorinated and which ones were not. And that's how I can tell you that the safest plastic bag is actually Ziploc. And don't touch
Oh,
any of
interesting.
the generic ones because the ones from Target, the ones from Walmart, all the other generic ones have been fluorinated or look as if they've been fluorinated because of the
Wow.
levels that we're finding of organic
Well,
fluorine.
can we stop there for a moment for
Of course.
a test on the testing? Because I'm curious. So you identified that you're unable to specifically identify the chemicals or the 15,000, but generically you can test their presence collectively with a broad spectrum test. It collects all of them together, and you just get a
Right.
number, which
The
is
broad
probably better and
spectrum.
it's easier. Is that like high performance liquid chromatography HPLC you're doing that with, or
It's a
something
burn
else?
test. So no, it's they do have that type of test, but when you use that test in the parts per billions, they can't extract the polymers. So it always
Okay.
goes back to the polymers. So this test that I'm using has
Oh,
been around since the
what's
60s. It's an
what's the
old
test? Uh,
fashioned burn test.
what
And
is it
none
about
of the
burn?
labs
A
like
burn?
to, yeah,
Give me
they
one.
burn it.
Oh, wow! And they analyze the paper.
Yep. It's an
Wow.
old-fashioned test. And all the so it's crazy with the testing though, and this is the other thing we're finding is a lot of the labs across the United States, they like their more expensive testing. So they will kind of like pass
Hmm.
off a test that doesn't extract polymers and still call it organic, total organic fluorine. So a lot of times when brands are getting this more expensive testing that costs like $500-$600 per test, which is a lot,
Hmm.
they're not getting any results that have anything to do with Teflon. So they'll never know if they have Teflon in their
Hmm.
product unless they go back to the old fashioned total
Wow.
organic fluorine testing that was tried and true, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And that's still what we're able to use to identify total organic fluorine and include those polymers in the results. It's kind of a
This,
trip, actually.
this is fascinating. I knew it was bad before we talked. I had a deep appreciation of how bad it was, but I didn't realize how bad it was. It's even worse because I had
This,
no concept that the equipment that's used to manufacture these items, and maybe even some of our items, we are very assiduous and diligent and obsessive about testing it and making sure that the highest quality raw ingredients. But if it goes through a system and a machine that's lubricated with Teflon, you could be putting these in there and not even know it. It's not disclosed by anyone. It's not required by law. It's not illegal to do what they're doing at all in
yeah,
any way, shape, or form. So it's not really an integrity glitch. It's literally ignorance of the
yeah,
damage of these chemicals.
right.
It,
And it's tough. I'm having to educate a
wow.
lot of brand owners at the same time. I'm constantly educating people about what we're finding, why we're finding it, bringing in my advisors, to help them. It is really a difficult situation because people don't know what they don't know. And so therefore,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
tough.
do they contract you out for your services as a consultant and you and your team to help them identify where it is? No, you
I
just give them
don't, I
broad
don't,
guidelines and
I
they
don't,
figure it out.
I don't do any consulting, paid consulting for brands.
Mhm.
I just do it for free because it's a service to my community. So, because I figure a lot of these brands are more natural. So I
Mhm.
figure if I help them clean up their supply chain, then I'm helping my audience. And, at the end of the day, that's
Wow,
who
that's
pays me and
beautiful.
that's who
That's
I'm loyal
beautiful.
to. Yeah. Maybe I should just explain to your audience how it is that we pay for these studies because
Mhm.
that question always comes up and it's really important to understand. The people who pay for the studies are the community owners. So our
Mhm.
community pays for the studies. So we use all of our ad revenue and our affiliate to pay for the studies. So I fork out the money to do the study and then we make our money back when we link things up that are non-detect for affiliates. So it goes to Amazon, it goes to the companies directly. A lot of times what happens is sometimes the companies, we don't even have them linked up when we do the investigation and the companies come to us behind the scenes and say, "Hey, let's do an affiliate agreement and we'll give a discount to everybody." And they're in the best, in our best realm, which would be our non-detect realm. And we make our money back by people clicking on things and buying things. And so when they come to our site and they make purchases, that's just fueling the machine, giving us more resources to be able to do more testing. That's
Wow,
how
that's
it works.
beautiful because you've established a model that works that really minimizes potential conflict of interest concerns
Right.
because
Because
there's
that does
so
become
much
the biggest issue.
corruption that occurs in this industry. And essentially, you're like the contemporary 21st century valid version of Consumer Reports. And maybe you can comment on Consumer Reports because they're ostensibly doing something similar to yours, not necessarily in this specific niche, but occasionally interacting in that niche.
And we do partner with Consumer Reports behind the scenes. In actually in March, they covered my studies in their magazine, so
Mhm.
I do know them behind the scenes. I talk with their scientists, and we're actually in meetings lobbying the state of California over food dyes and things like that. So I do interact with a lot of these nonprofits behind the scenes quite a bit. Yeah.
Is Consumer Reports a nonprofit?
I think they're a nonprofit. I mean, I can't be 100% sure, but I think they are. But they
Okay.
are involved behind the scenes. They have a great scientific staff. They do all kinds of different things. And they do this type of testing. But they'll do, I'm trying to remember what was the last thing that they did. They did water. The other day they tested a lot of seltzer waters a couple years ago. So that's something that we're doing right now behind the scenes. And so, but I'm testing different waters than what they tested. And so we kind of work to not step on each other's toes, because I'm going to cover their reporting anyway. So if they put out a report, I'm going to cover it on our site. And so regardless of what happens, we're going to do the content and we're going to bring it to our audience. And so it's kind of nice to work with them behind the scenes to say, okay, you handle this, I'll handle that. And then we just, we're able to divide and conquer and do more things, like that. But
So
I have that relationship with a lot of nonprofits where we just kind of,
that's perfect.
behind the scenes stay in contact and kind of just keep track of what we're doing. And I'm planning out my calendar to be able to cover their stuff. So we're
That's
equal opportunity. If they're testing it, we're
yeah,
covering it.
that's great. I never even knew you existed before. That's really perfect. Um, so what you've been doing this for 15 years. Do you have any plans or ambitions and goals of what you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
I want to test the entire grocery store. I mean, that's my first plan right now, is just to get
Yeah.
as much as I possibly can tested. And I'm expanding our testing. So we used to just do total organic fluorine. So coming up, we're going to be doing, we have done pesticide testing, glyphosate testing, with PFAS testing, with phthalate testing, with all heavy metals all together. We actually have our protein powder investigation planned, where we've done that with 11 really popular wellness products, wellness
Mhm.
protein shakes, and we've tested them. We've spent like $1,600 on each product to test everything. And so
Mm.
I can't wait to be able to do that in the future, and to be able to do that with more, to be able to give people more information, because, I'm just limited to my budget. But this year, of course,
Yeah.
we've grown a bit because we've done so many things and we've gotten so many viral investigations. And so our traffic went up and our income went up. And so I'm able to do more type of testing, which I really like to be able to do to cover all of it. We just released coffee the other day, and we did glyphosate, pesticides, and mycotoxins. But then
Yeah.
the
You
study
have to
came
do
out that said,
mycotoxins.
right. Well, we actually didn't find as much. Well, we were testing all the wellness brands, the
Okay, yeah,
premium
but the
coffees.
regular coffee, you're going to find tons of mycotoxin,
Yeah,
just
and the
because
regular stuff
an
I think
aberration
we
of the
can.
way they harvest it.
Right.
The coffee berries. I mean, they just let them go on the ground, and after a few days, they got mold on them.
Right, right. But then, but for instance, there was a study that came out last week that said PFAS in coffee, and I'm like, oh darn, I didn't test PFAS for coffee, so I'm going to take their best coffees and test them for 40 analytes, PFAS analytes, to be
Yeah.
able to confirm which ones also had that. So it's kind of like a work in progress for us. I'll put something out, and sometimes I'll go back and add more to it. But
Hmm.
the purpose is just to make it as useful as possible, and it's got to be something that's not out there. So we're not going to be testing things that have already been tested. We're testing things that are
Yeah,
needed.
yeah, for sure. So, in your litany of items that you're testing for, I didn't hear you say bisphenols. Is that something you check for?
We're actually starting that. I just sent out Invisalign, just sent off Invisalign to test not only for BPA and BPS, but BPAF, and I think an additional 7 bisphenols. So
Yeah, there's at
yeah,
least
so
a dozen, if
our
not or 20. There's a lot.
there is quite a bit. The other thing that we struggle with, which actually a lot of the other nonprofits struggle with, is getting labs to work with us. There are
Hmm.
most of the labs that I work with, I cannot talk about or say who I'm working with. And the reasons behind that, they have their reasons. But a lot of times it has to do with the brands don't like it. The brands, kind of band together and do this to the lab, and then they lose money. And so people like me, Consumer Reports, Environmental Working Group, a lot of us that do this testing and these types of studies are limited to who we can work with. So I'm really excited because one of my favorite labs just brought on bisphenols. And so you'll start to see a lot more of that coming out, because as I can convince our labs to take on more of these consumer toxins and be able to get ISO certified, the more we're able to do, which is
That's
awesome.
beautiful. So you've been doing this for a while, and you've got a pretty significant depth of understanding in the field. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what you've identified as the biggest threats. What are the most concerning EDCs?
Well, PFAS is primarily the ones that my advisors are concerned with, but BPA, phthalates, PFAS, and specific pesticides are kind of in the realm of, oh my goodness, PFAS being one of the most scariest ones for them, and the
Wow.
reason for that is the persistence of the chemical. So
Hmm. They're called
depending
the
on
forever chemicals.
Right. Depending on the
Yeah.
type of chemical you have in your body, it can take from months to 40 years to get it out of your body. So if you kind of like think about it, and that is just the health understanding that we have of the limited amount of chemicals that we can
Hmm.
identify and test.
Hmm.
And so of those 15,000, we just don't know. So, I would actually encourage everybody to look into their water, to assume that you're getting PFAS in your water, because what we don't know is far more problematic than what we do know in terms of that. So,
Wow.
like, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
and that's again having why the organic fluorine testing is so important, because you can really tell a story or understand, what's going on without having to spend $1 billion and only identify 100 of these chemicals, which is, to identify all 100 of the chemicals, you can't have water, because these matrix are far more complicated, more like sediment and like tangible things, not just water, not liquids. And then you're limited, right? And then all of these testing together costs over $1,000. So it's like it's just insane, the amount of just money it takes to do this. And just, and it's not just for people like us. Imagine the brands, these small businesses are having to fork out
Mhm.
all this money, and it's the global supply chain that's really working against
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think, yes, of course, absolutely. What we don't know a lot about the polymers, the fluoropolymers, the PFAS fluoropolymers, because we can't identify them. They're quite frightening. It's because we don't know a lot, and there are quite a bit of them. And things that I learned that I didn't know before I started testing were how much plastic was fluorinated. You've got the
Mm.
safer plastics that are supposed to be safer because they don't have these toxic chemicals in them. Those
Mm.
are the plastics that are more likely to be fluorinated. And what they do is they put a fluoropolymer gas on the plastic. So it's like right on the surface, and it shores up the plastics, makes them less likely to warp and move and stronger. However, it comes off very easily because you only have to rub on it to get it to come off. And so those types of things are happening in manufacturing. Like you have, for instance, GOTS organic cotton coming from India or Pakistan, wrapped in cellophane, where the cellophane is fluorinated. So when it gets to, and you want it to be wrapped in plastic, because when it gets to the ports, it's sprayed down with pesticides. So you want something covering it so it doesn't impact the inside where the cotton is. However, if the manufacturers in India and Pakistan are not savvy enough to not opt for the non-fluorinated cellophane wrap, then it's all over the organic cotton. So these are the examples of things in the supply chain
Jeez.
that are just not
Oh.
figured out yet. That is the reason why I'm doing all this testing. It's the reason why we test organic brands right next to conventional brands side by side. The hardest thing about this is the amount of organic products that we have found that have fluorination issues where the conventional stuff does not. And so, in my mind, from many years ago, I would say conventional bad brands bad, organic brands good.
Sure. It's
But when I
simplistic, but
started doing the testing, what I realized over the many years that I've been doing this is these manufacturers are smaller manufacturers that many years ago were not as relevant, decided to become organic, but don't have the more modern facilities and just all of the things like, more modern drums, stainless steel, this, like all of that stuff to be able to support a product that would not be contaminated with a fluorine or something like that. So I'm unfortunately finding fluorine in a lot of organic type products, which
mm.
makes it difficult for me because I was one of the people that grew the organic industry. And if you want to I'll just tell you, just to give you an example. Many years ago, the Organic Trade Association asked me to speak on their behalf at Nuremberg at a conference called BioFoc. BioFoc is the largest organic industry conference globally. That's where they all get together. So they had a workshop, and the Americans were teaching the rest of the world how we grew organic, how big and how fast we grew it. They asked me to be on that and one other person from Organic Valley to represent and explain what happened. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much I put into how many years growing the industry. And now I find myself in a very ironic position where I'm testing them quite a bit and saying to them, y'all need to start working on phthalates, PFAS. You really need to start testing for these things because the organic eaters of the world really care about these toxins because they're just as bad as the pesticides. They're just as bad as the other stuff
Yeah.
that you're avoiding. And
Well,
we need to get, we need to get
yeah,
a bearing here.
you correctly identified the organic eaters are the ones that are concerned, but everyone needs to be concerned. They're only not concerned because they're not unaware. They're unaware. They're ignorant of reality.
They're
That's
unaware.
pressing. So I'm curious on a number of things. Have you identified an assay or a test that an individual can do, like someone in your group, to measure the burden of these chemicals in their body? Is there some type of screen that you can serially
Yes,
measure
you can
and
actually
find
go
out
to
how you're
Quest
doing?
Lab right now. So Quest Lab is one of the largest labs. You can
Sure.
go to your doctor, and there is a test where they do blood plasma, and Quest has it. And I think they're testing 18 chemicals.
And
Now,
which ones are they testing?
the most common ones, the legacy ones, the ones that you're probably going to find in your water and,
Okay.
in blueberries or turkey or what
Yeah,
have
but
you, or stuff like
a
that.
serum test is less than ideal, because a lot of these chemicals are not in your blood. They're not in your serum. They're in your tissues. They're fat.
Well,
They're
okay.
they're typically called POPs, right? Persistent organic pollutants, and they're fat soluble, and they stay in the fat.
So here's the interesting thing with PFAS. It doesn't follow in the same route as most of these chemicals. I'm going to give you an example. Scott Belcher, one of our main advisors, I
Mm-hmm.
call him the alligator wrangler. He kind of monitors a Superfund site through, I think it's North Carolina State University. And what he does to monitor PFAS, he goes out to the lakes. He literally wrangles the alligators out of the lakes. Kid you not. This is on PBS. You can find it. Wrangles them out of the lakes, anesthetizes them. He takes their tissue and their blood because that's where you'll find it. And so the tissue and the blood, then he puts them back in the lakes. And that's how he monitors and also creates new methods for testing PFAS. And alligators, believe it or not, have a similar immune system to us. And they're at the top of the food chain, just like us. So there's a lot of reasons why they like to use alligators. But it is one thing that he would said it's absolutely in the blood and it's absolutely in the serum. So
No, it's good
it's
to know. So
expelling
particularly for
other
PFAS.
things. So it's not in your
Okay.
fat because it repels fat. So that's why
So
it's
it's
found in
probably
your blood.
yeah, it's hydrophilic. We're supposed most of the persistent organic pollutants and the EDCs are hydrophobic. They're fat soluble.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And
So that's
also
good
why
to
it
know.
makes it difficult for this to, so this is
So
the harder part. Detoxing it out of the body is really hard as well.
well,
So
that's what I want to talk about. The next is I'm curious. Do a fair number of your followers regularly monitor their levels?
some people do, but this is really I'm the first one to do this. So I've gotten a couple of tests. I have a lot of PFOS in my body, which was one of those
Okay.
chemicals that stays in your body for quite a long time. How do I have it in my body? I got no idea. I got no idea. It's just there. But I am probably no different than most people in the United
Sure.
States with high
Sure.
levels of PFOS. Now,
Okay.
according to the
Where's
studies
PF,
that they've done, where
what is
they've tried
PFOS? Where is that from?
so that is carpets, carpeting, stuff like that. So
Carpets.
it's been
Oh
in a
boy.
lot of yeah, and it's not really used quite so much. So it's something that you would find, I believe in. I'm trying to think of it like it would be in water now, but
Okay.
the exposure that I had is probably from decades ago, to be quite
Wow.
honest.
Because okay, it just lasts that long. Wow.
It really does.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So what have you found to be a good detox method?
So, based on the studies that they've done with firemen, so they've
Hmm.
actually studied firemen to help them get PFAS out of their system because
Hmm.
firemen are one of the worst exposed because of all the
Hmm.
things that they're exposed to in the air and they're breathing it in. Um, blood and serum donations. So, the best way that they've found to get rid of PFAS is to donate your blood, and that
Wow,
is
that's so
platelets.
fascinating because I actually recommend that for people regularly, not because of this chemical issue, but because of
Yeah.
iron. And myself personally, I take out 4 ounces of blood every 2 weeks or 2 ounces a week. Gone.
So,
Goodbye.
Platelets are the best way to get rid of it. So they looked at people that did platelets, and they looked at people that did just
Wow.
regular blood. Platelets get rid of the most. And then people are constantly asking me, well, isn't that unethical? 99.9% of the people in the United States have this in their blood. So it's already being donated. Everyone who is donating their blood is giving over PFAS. So
Yes.
the other thing I just wanted to let the ladies know, this is a new appreciation for your period, because every month you're getting rid of blood, and that blood will have PFAS in it. So women are
Wow.
detoxing this out of their body monthly, where men, you guys don't really have, your bodies aren't as forgiving with the detoxing agents as
Well,
women
but
are.
you can do it voluntarily. You can either
Yes,
donate your blood, which is the
you
least
absolutely can.
expensive, but you're probably limited to 4 times a year, once every 3 months. Most centers won't allow you to go more than that. Uh, but you can do it yourself or have a phlebotomist do it for you.
That would be great. I mean,
It's
I'm
probably
hoping one day
it's
they will be
probably
able
something
to
that would
clean it.
extend your lifespan. Yeah.
I'm hoping one day they can clean this out of your blood, because then, I'd be the first one to sign up, and I just don't
Yeah,
know
that
of
would
that,
be very expensive, I'm
probably.
sure. So I think I have to confirm this because wasn't really studying the PFAS, but I'm pretty confident. If it is it typically classified as an EDC? I think
Oh,
it is.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So the mechanism of the EDCs are they activate the estrogen receptor. So I would offer
I
that
believe they're androgen mimickers.
mimickers.
Androgen
Interesting.
mimickers, I
Why
believe.
before all right, I'm going to have to study this further because I have not. There could be a variety of different mechanisms in EDCs and not generically or universally consistent. Because I don't remember most of them. Certainly for all the pesticides, all the phthalates, the BPAs, those are all estrogen receptor activators, no
Yeah,
question.
pesticides and bisphenols, 100%
Yeah,
estrogen. I
no
think
question about that. I don't
for
know
the
about PFAS
PFAS
though, because
and the
I
phthalates,
didn't really look at it too carefully. I
PFAS
did
and
not know it
phthalates
was
are
such an
more
issue. I'm so
androgen
glad we had this
mimickers,
interview. Yeah.
which is kind of frightening, because you're right. It's a whole different pathway, and it's a
Have
different
you
way
looked
of
at
looking.
sauna? It seems sauna would be a very helpful way. And typically with these others, like bisphenols and the phthalates, it's in the sweat more than it is in the blood. It's in the
Yeah.
sweat. So if you
I
can
do
facilitate sweating
I do infrared sauning every morning. So,
every
I
morning,
mean,
that's a lot. Okay, so let's get into the details. How hot is your sauna?
I get in at 100, and it gets up to 120, and I'm in there for 30 minutes. So it's
Okay,
not
that's a
that 120
start.
the whole time.
Would you mind be offering a suggestion?
Of course, I'd love a suggestion.
I would suggest that 120 is where you start. Don't go in it before it's 120. And I would suggest done that for a while. I would start maybe going up 2 degrees every week.
2 degrees every week.
And
Okay.
depending on your sauna, you might have to swap out one of the heaters in there, but it may only go up to 130, 140. It's unusual for most infrared saunas to get that hot, but you need about 150, 160
Oh,
ideally.
wow.
And then because you got to get hot, one of the ways you can test this is just use your thermometer. You should
Yes.
be at least 3 or 4 degrees above what you are when you go in, and you should be sweating a lot too. I mean, if you're not sweating rivers of sweat, then you're not much is coming out, right? You're just going through the motions and not getting benefits. And if you're going to put that time and you've got it, you may as well crank it up. So I typically turn my sauna on about an hour and a half to 2 hours before I go in to get up as
Oh,
high as possible. Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah. I go,
Mine's only
I
like
would
30
go in.
minutes, and then I'm getting it. So it's
No,
like it's
no,
right
no.
at 100.
It's not even warmed up at 30 minutes. You got to
Okay.
do at least an hour, probably an hour and a half before you even step in it.
Got it. Got it.
And
Well,
then
I'm
the
glad
other
I'm
thing too,
talking
if
to
you're
you.
working out, you can do your workout, especially now in the summer, and turn up the air conditioning so you're not as cool, and then you
Yeah.
can let your body heat up just from your exercise. If you can increase your core body temperature, then go in the sauna. You get another benefit. But you really got to
Can you
increase the sweat.
move to California and just hang out with me in the morning?
Well,
That'd be fantastic.
I'm
I'm
actually.
closer to the beach, not right by it, not like you, but like
Yeah,
closer.
the beach is a miracle. It really is because it allows you to capture the energy of the sun. You say,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Well, the sun can, if you're healthy, and that means you don't have reductive stress, which is a concept I discussed previously, but not many people understand. But it's a surplus of electrons in your electron transport chain, and it blocks additional electrons going in there. What are you talking about electrons? Well, electrons are the energy you create from food. I mean, your body converts food into electrons. You may not know that, but that's the truth. And these electrons, once they're liberated, they go into your electron transport chain and create ATP. But you can do that from the sun.
Hmm.
Your sun, there's a biological mechanism that will convert photons from the sun to electrons. I've actually discovered it earlier this year, and I'm in the process of doing the research to confirm it and publish the papers. I haven't identified the mechanism of how they get transferred from the extracellular space into the mitochondria. That I haven't figured out yet, but I do know that that's how you create this electron surplus. So, but if you got reductive stress, you're kind of screwed unless you're at the ocean. You walking in the ocean in the water, and then that discharges the electrons into the ocean, and then you're golden.
That's amazing.
So it's really cool. But you can have me with you. You know why? What are you talking about, Mercola? Well, I'm coming out with an app. It's going to be launched soon.
Tell me about it.
It's called the Mercola Coach app. Mercola Health Coach app, MHC, Mercola Health Coach. It'll be on all the platforms, Facebook, Apple, the iPhone store, and the Android store. And it'll have all this information there, give you all these tips, and it'll have loads of it. Basically, is your health coach, your personal health coach.
That's fantastic.
Advice. Like this, like sauna and stuff.
I could have used you like 6 months ago telling me.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Everyone could, and we're going to try to democratize this and make this information available to everyone because it needs to be. It needs to be.
It's important to democratize.
I mean, it's hard enough just to figure this thing out. I mean, I'm trying as hard as I can, and I missed PFAS. I didn't even understand that was an issue. I was diligently searching this topic, and I'm looking at it, and I know what I'm doing, but I missed it. And people don't even know that EDCs are an issue. They're unaware. Right. Most people don't. They've never even heard of them. Yet it's one of the most. It's the most. I perceive it could be the potentially most serious threat to humanity, continuing long term.
There. Definitely for reproduction and all of those things.
I mean, we're doing it. We've radically decreased our fertility rates, and it's getting worse every year. So, I mean, just from reproduction, if you don't reproduce, the species goes extinct. But biologically, you could be so destroyed in function that you won't. You have no resilience, and you won't survive. I mean, you're just going to be extinguished from that. And we're on that path. If nothing changes, that will inevitably happen. My mission is to abort that path, and I'm confident we can do it with people like you.
Shauna Swan, and she
Shauna,
did a lot of those phthalates. Right. She was on the Joe Rogan show. She's been all over the place. Yeah. But
Shauna's great. She's a good woman.
She's great about phthalates is the big monster that she's tackling. And so for her, phthalates in sperm and the effectiveness of sperm has gone down about 50% since the 1970s.
Yeah, and I should get her on the show too. Yeah, that's a big one. I kind of missed this. I didn't realize what a pernicious threat this was until I put together this unified theory of health, and then I started looking at the factors that contribute. These were one of the big ones. Probably bigger, but I was confused and thought it was endogenous estrogen. And endogenous estrogen, I'm convinced, makes it worse, which is why I think most every adult watching this should be on progesterone to balance that estrogen stimulus. Now, you have to be careful for menstruating women. You can't take it every day because you have to take it during the luteal phase of your cycle, the last part of your cycle. You don't want to take it continuously, otherwise you ruin your cycle. But otherwise, that will radically lower your endogenous estrogen. And many of these xenoestrogens, most of the hydrophobic estrogens that activate the estrogen receptor. So I think it's a simple thing that you could add to that. I didn't understand that blood donation was a powerful strategy to lower PFAS.
Oh yeah,
but I'm definitely adding that to my book. So thank you.
Hey, I'm happy to be of service here, Dr. Mercola.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be of service here.
So let's tie things up here because I want to. We'll talk after we finish the interview, but I think I'm confident that we need your advice on the website. I want to invite you to do a regular column on the site because this is an important issue.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd love to do something like that.
We'll talk about that because I'm passionate about this. This is one of my new passions because I never got it before I started doing this book. And now I get it in a big way. In fact, at the end of the chapter I wrote, I identified 10 biological molecules, natural molecules like chitin and keratin and collagen that can be used if you manipulate them correctly as substitutes for plastic. Yeah. And I'm actually going to start a company to look at these things, like food wrappers.
That's great.
Plastic that your meat is stored in. All those, no one thinks about that. Anytime your food touches plastic anywhere along the supply chain, that's a problem. And I did not realize that they were integrating fluoride into it.
Yeah, we
Jeez.
actually did butter
I
wrappers.
never knew
We have
that.
a whole investigation on butter wrappers that we put up on Mamavation. We did that last year.
That was your organization.
That was
I saw that recently. I didn't realize it was your organization. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, and some of the best butters were contaminated.
Yeah, and that was the hard part. Yeah, and but it also forces these organic companies to do the organic
The
fluorine
right thing.
testing.
Do the
Right.
right thing. And then that's the only way this will ever change. You have to force the supply chain to clean up their act. No one's monitoring. They're not doing anything illegal. And they don't even know. They're doing it out of ignorance, not out of malintent. It's just ignorance. And in some cases, maybe it's not because they know and they refuse to do it. Then that's reprehensible and that's criminal behavior in my book. But most of the time, I suspect it's just ignorance.
Ignorance, but there's also a dual thing going on at the same time, that if they don't test, it's not discoverable in court.
Oh, yeah. There you go. The same thing.
There is that part of it as well that we work with. So for some people, I believe it's complete ignorance. They just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, it's a strategy. For the people where it's a strategy, when I do the testing, I've broken that. So that's the part that I'm really happy about. Like, no.
Yeah, kudos to you for that. We need people like you for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So until you're on our site, how do people find you and connect and find out more of your information?
So if you go to mamavation.com, spelled MAMAVATION.com, we have a newsletter you can sign up for, and we do weekly investigations, and you'll find those when we do Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I'm also available on Twitter as Mamavation, on Facebook as Mamavation, and on Instagram. But if you want to get into the private group and you're a mom, look for the private Facebook group with Mamavation. Just search that in Facebook and you can get in there. And that's where we actually start planning out our investigations. So my community tells me what to test, what they need me to test, and what is not out there for them yet. So that's where we do all the planning. So moms are welcome.
Okay, so I'm just curious. Why do you hate men? And you
don't
allow
hate
them
men.
to...
I have all boys. I love men. I'm a tomboy too.
That was sarcasm, of course. That was a Jimmy Dore type of sarcasm.
Yeah. I grew up with boys, so I can hold my own against you guys. I'm fine.
So, but how come you don't have men in your group?
It's because women need a unique space to be able to be intimate, and when we have guys in there, it just changes the whole ambiance. So that's why.
Okay. Just curious.
It works out better for us that way. We like to have our own little place.
Okay.
So I don't mind when you boys have your places. We like to have our places too.
All right, good. All right, well, that's great. Well, this has been delightful, outstanding, and I'm so excited when I get to learn new things. So thank you for helping engage in that process with me.
I'm happy to be of service. Very happy to be of service.
Okay, so good. You heard it. You want to get aware, become aware, participate in this process, and we're going to do more together. So I look forward to having you back.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for watching. Remember, hit the like and subscribe button so you can get more videos that can help you and your family take control of your health.